Hi, I'm Saad Qureshi from the Young Muslims Advisory Group, and I'm here today with Hazel Blears, Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, to ask her the questions that have been put forward by you on Yoosk on important issues. Minister, Cy Green asks, in the 80s, at a time of severe recession, we had anti-police riots and the rise of the extreme right. Are you confident that something like that won't happen this time, and why?
Yes, I am confident because I think our communities these days are much more cohesive. People understand each other better. That's not to say that I don't think that there are tensions out there in some places, particularly with unemployment. People lose their jobs, if housing's short, if people have seen a lot of change in their communities. That's why it's so important that we keep in touch with what's happening on the ground. We've got a huge programme to put money into places, also to do projects bringing people together from different backgrounds, getting people playing sport together. Really that sense that even though we're going through a difficult time, we're going to try and help you with jobs, we're going to help you keep a roof over your head with your homes, and we're going to try and help businesses, and that way we can keep people together. What happened in the 80s and the 90s was basically because the government at that time just left people on their own, sink or swim. We are determined to help people through this difficult time, and when we do come through it, then we want to make sure our communities are as strong as they can be.
Ordinary Boy asks an interesting question. Why has it proved so hard to get the views of ordinary people heard?
Do you know, I think Ordinary Boy's asking the best question because these days sometimes people think politics is something that happens somewhere else, above them, high above them, and people often say to me when I knock on their doors, oh, I'm not really interested in politics, I don't understand it. And then you talk to them about whether or not you get a health centre, what your children's education is like, whether or not there are jobs for people. All of those are big political issues. So I think politicians like myself need to be much more in touch on the ground. We're bringing in some new powers so that people, if they sign a petition, for the first time will be entitled legally to a response to the issues that they've raised. I'm trying to make sure that young people, through our youth advisors and our youth mayors, are really influential. And I've just heard today that the youth mayor in North Tyneside has been elected and the turnout was 59%, which is much higher than a lot of council elections, and there were 52 candidates, and that says to me that ordinary people do want to get their voices heard, and I think government has to change in order to make that happen.
Martin Murphy asks, if bloggers were to form a national association, do you think that they'd have a role to play in strengthening communities? And will such an association attract government funding and other incentives?
Well, we're already funding quite a lot of developments of new media, of websites, Twitters, all of that. And in fact, when I did my white paper last year, I made a specific point of using all those new online techniques in order to hear voices that wouldn't necessarily usually get to have a voice. I'm a bit sceptical of bloggers doing a national association because my experience is most bloggers are pretty individual characters and they want to get their own point of view across. But I do think that blogging, if it's constructive, can have a really good role to play. The bit about blogging that I really don't like is when it's just simply cynical, when it's corrosive, when it opposes everything that happens. And I'm afraid there are some bloggers who do exactly that. But blogging in itself, I think, can really make a difference. But I'm just not sure that all those individual bloggers out there would fit comfortably in a national association.
Anelo asks an interesting question. Does the Secretary of State agree that redundant town centres should be transferred on a temporary basis into local authority and community ownership to facilitate the development of community enterprise during the recession, thereby reinvigorating ghost towns and supporting young unemployed graduates into self-employment within the third sector when the private sector has withdrawn?
Well, this is a really important issue just at the moment because obviously with the recession, if we're not careful, we'll see a lot of empty shop units on our town centres. And myself and Andy Burnham, the Secretary of State for Culture and Media, we're getting together to look at our town centres. Can we give some of those empty shops, exactly as you've said, to organisations? In my own town centre in Eccles. One of the empty shops has been turned into a little art gallery run by local people, and not only is that a good use for the shop, actually the other shops in the neighbourhood have seen an increase in their business because people are coming to look at the paintings and they're doing a bit of shopping at the same time. It makes perfect sense. We've been transferring assets now for the last 2 years to community groups to run old markets, community halls, and to run them as not-for-profit businesses, and I am very, very keen to see more of this happen. So if you've got any ideas out there, there's a building near you that you'd like to have a bigger say about, that you could get a business in, and that you, as young people particularly, have got some really exciting ideas, perhaps around media and culture and arts, bring it on.
Thank you, Minister.